Prime Minister is facing a backlash from some Conservative MPs after announcing the Plan B restrictions at a time when the government is in crisis over the lockdown Christmas party scandal. One Tory backbencher also called on the Health Secretary to resign as he announced the measures in the Commons.
Well, joining us now, the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, Angela Rayner, who was there at Prime Minister's Questions yesterday. Very good morning to you.
Morning.
What do you think Boris Johnson should do? Because even the Scottish Conservative leader says that the Prime Minister should not continue if he knew about a party and misled the Commons.
Well, the rules are very clear on if you mislead Parliament, then ministers and the Prime Minister is not above the rules. The Ministerial Code says that he would have to resign. But I think here we've got a Prime Minister who, quite frankly, I never felt was fit for office anyway, but has proven over the last couple of months that he isn't. He's undermined it with the Owen Paterson, dodgy contracts. Now we're talking about multiple potential events and parties happening within Number 10 and within his own flat at Number 10. So, you know, he spent the last week after I wrote to the Cabinet Secretary asking for an investigation into the allegations. He spent the week saying nothing to see here, no, it didn't happen. And then, of course, this video emerged and now he's had to backtrack on that. And I think it just proves that Boris Johnson is a man who has never felt the rules applies to him. But when it's something as serious as a global pandemic, where the science advice and the chief medical officer's advice is very clear, and that the British public have been doing their bit, they've not seen loved ones, people who have died and haven't been able to see their loved ones, and yet the Prime Minister seems to have, you know, just disregarded those rules and think they don't apply to them. So it's upsetting. It's devastatingly upsetting, and it shows that the Prime Minister isn't fit for his office.
Is the Cabinet Secretary the right person to investigate? We understand yesterday Met Police say they aren't going to investigate. I mean, anybody who had a lockdown party or was prosecuted under that legislation will think, well, hang on a moment, how come the police aren't investigating what's happening in Downing Street?
Well, exactly. There'll be a lot of people that are angry because there is prosecutions going through the courts now of people around that time who broke the rules. So I do think the rules have to apply consistently. And I think it's even more important when it's the Prime Minister and Number 10, because they're the ones that set the rules. So I think it's very clear what has to happen now. The Cabinet Secretary has to come forward with the evidence, the CCTV. It can't be that hard to find the information. Over 40 people allegedly was at this party with Christmas jumpers on and Secret Santa. It can't be that hard to find the information. And when the information is there, that it has to be handed over to the Met Police. And when they've got that evidence, they should deal with it as they would do with anybody else who has been flaunting the rules at that time.
Yep.
Angela Rayner, the Prime Minister will say that he's now doing the absolute right thing. He can't make rash decisions and just sack people willy-nilly. He's got to get the evidence. It's got to be a full investigation and a full inquiry. This is what any Prime Minister would do at this point, is what he would say.
He spent the last week saying there wasn't a party, and yet these allegations that there was even a gathering in his own flat. So, you know, I think it's incredulous that he comes to Prime Minister's Questions yesterday and says, I'm deeply sorry that one of my senior advisors was laughing and joking about, you know, cheese and wine. I think it's appalling behaviour. I think he had an opportunity to put things right, and yet time and time again, this Prime Minister thinks it's one rule for everybody else and one rule for him and his mates. And I'm sorry, the public now are incredibly cross, and quite rightly so, because they changed their plans, and they did do that on the advice, and it's right to do that, and people should follow the advice of the scientists and the chief medical officer. But Boris Johnson and his advisors and his staff are not above the law, and they have to start acting responsible.
Some of the staff there would say, look, we're working 18, 19-hour days, and at times we may have had a bottle of wine and some cheese at the end of the evening, and there could have been a few of us. That's their argument. Are you confident that has not happened anywhere across the Labour Party? Because the Labour Party will be working long hours. Are you confident that in no office up and down the country that some Labour staff may not, during lockdown, say, oh, you know what, we've been working a long time, someone get some wine in, we'll just hang back and have a few drinks before going home? Are you sure that didn't happen?
We were consistent. Both myself and Keir Starmer worked incredibly long hours during the pandemic, as did lots of people up and down this country and businesses. We were consistent as the leadership in our party that there would be no parties, no gatherings. People were working from home, and we were very diligent because we were also concerned to keep our staff safe, because we thought it was important that not only did we follow the rules so the public saw that we saw it as a serious threat and that we had to protect people, but we had a duty of care to our staff to ensure that our workplaces were safe. So we did follow the rules. We were very clear and consistent about those rules. And actually, when we didn't see our loved ones, when we were self-isolating, as Keir had done many times, when our family and friends, I lost my aunt, I lost my uncle through COVID. Everyone went through this. People that are listening to this programme have all got harrowing stories about how they had to make sacrifices. And it doesn't wash with me that the Prime Minister didn't know that there was parties going on at Downing Street, and then for staff to be laughing about it and mocking it. I think the British public are just absolutely furious about it, and quite rightly so.
Well, from the comments on that we're getting here at the programme, you are right, there is a lot of upset about it. I would have to say there are a few people saying it was a year ago, let's move on. Are you supportive of the Plan B recommendations that were announced yesterday, or do you think he should have gone further?
Well, first of all, we're supportive of taking the measures that the scientists and the chief medical officer says we need to, and that's important. This isn't just the Prime Minister, because quite frankly, no one believes what the Prime Minister says these days. He's undermined himself. But the evidence and the advice from the scientists and the chief medical officer is we need these measures, and we do support them. We think that mask wearing indoors should have been happening. The Welsh Government brought in, vaccination passports and negative testing some time ago. And what the government have done now is bring it in at the last minute at Christmas time, at the busiest period for businesses, when they've not given them time to adjust. That's frustrating. But again, I've been asking the government, and they still haven't acted on it, to deal with sick pay. People need to be paid sick pay so that if they need to take time off work to control the virus and to self-isolate, people should be given sick pay to make sure that they can do that. And many are not. And some of our our key frontline staff in care are not given the sick pay that they need. So the government could do that immediately, and that would help. And also ventilation. Our schools, they're freezing now. It's cold this time of year. The government have known that adequate ventilation in schools is important. We've been calling for it for over a year, and the government still haven't acted on that. They need to really ramp up their efforts now. Instead of concentrating on get-togethers and parties, they should really be doing everything that we can now to protect people so that we can continue as much as we possibly can as life is normal, and keeping people safe as we get through this pandemic.
All right, Angela Rayner, thank you very much indeed.